Hello and welcome to Gaze Reading and this episode of Spill the Tea, where today I am spilling the tea on LGBTQ plus travel with Alicia Valenski, who wrote Lonely Planet's LGBTQ plus travel guide. As always, if you like what you're hearing, please share us with your friends. You could follow us on social media at Gaze Reading. You could watch this episode over on YouTube. We're on Blue Sky. We are on Instagram. We're all over the place. If you are so inclined, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. We've had some fantastic episodes in the last couple of weeks, so make sure to check those out if you are new to us. If you've already listened, fantastic. Thank you so much for listening. And all that being said, please enjoy my conversation with Alicia Valenski. So, Alicia Valenski, let's get into it. The LGBTQ plus travel guide, interviews, itineraries, and inspiration from queer insiders in 50 plus proud places.
Yes, that is my
We
book.
love alliteration.
Yes. That's honestly probably one of my Achilles heels as a writer, but yes, we do.
Fantastic. Can you elaborate a bit more as to what this book really is?
Totally. So originally, I went to my literary agent with the idea for a book that I wanted to call Around the World with 80 Gays. She said, no, you cannot write that book. However, I do think that there's a kernel of something really interesting in there, which is interviewing queer people around the world about where they live and what makes it a good destination to visit if you're a queer traveler. So we workshopped the concept a bit, and essentially this is a community-driven guide. So I absolutely did not want this to be like, oh my God, like Bye Girl gives you her suggestions for places around the world. Like, honey, no. So I wanted it to be representative of the community. I wanted there to be like gay couples and lesbians and every identity under the sun. I wanted it to be different ages and different ethnicities and just as inclusive and diverse as possible to really be more representative of what is it like to exist as a queer person in this cultural moment. 2024 specifically was when I was writing the bulk of this. And then in these different destinations, what do these people actually do? Not when is the Pride Parade, not where are the clubs. What would somebody who lives here actually do if you visited them and you were like, hey, I've never been here before and I'm queer, where should I go? What would they personally tell you? What are their personal, like, tried and true recommendations? And so that was how it all happened. And it just became this really beautiful compendium of interviews. And it's not just their travel recommendations, right? It's like people's stories, like Angina Heels telling me like, I was overweight as a child and I was bullied. So now I like drag saved my life and it healed me. So I want to heal other people. And I'm like, oh, but also where do I get good Thai food? And she's like, I can tell you that too. It's like,
Yeah, and that's something that I was just going to say. You're not just getting a list, you're getting people's real stories about this is who I am, this is where I'm from, this is why, or this is where I live, this is why I love this place. What was the moment for you where you were like, we need this thing?
so I think for me, as I've alluded to, I am a neurodivergent person. So I have this weird thing where I have to try to balance my ADHD and my autism. And my autism is like, hey, we need to give as much clear information as concisely as possible. This needs to be super useful. Like they need to be able to plan a trip from this. And then my ADHD is like, but people's stories and distractions and look at the pretty pictures and let's make this really nice. And so for me, I needed to satisfy both of those sides. And I had to satisfy my anxiety with the whole section on what to do in case of emergency. What are the numbers
Yeah.
you can contact for your safety around the world? Like this needed to be practical. But in addition to being practical and obviously touching on safety, I wanted it to be celebratory. I wanted it to be queer joy because, like, we know we're in danger all the time. Like, we know that there are places that we could get fined or jailed or murdered for literally existing. We know that. Like, we have to touch on it eventually, but it does not need to be this entire book. So, focusing on people and focusing on their communities and what makes them amazing was such a like positive tone shift. I think for me, working with Lonely Planet was such a joy because this is just not something like anything they've done before. This was not
Yeah.
it's not a coffee table book and it's not a guidebook, but it's got
Right.
parts of both, to your point.
Right.
And so it really became its own category. Like I don't quite know how it happened other than I was really adamant in arguing for different parts of this book that needed to exist and for the way that it should exist. And like it's a real choose your own adventure because it's okay. Do I know that I just want to go to islands? So I'm going to go to the inclusive island escapes section. Do I
Hmm.
just want to read people's stories and know that maybe I'm going to be drawn to Europe? I could start there. Like you can go wherever you want to begin this book. It doesn't have to be read from start to finish. So I don't think I
Yeah.
answered your question, but it's just it's
That's
been
okay.
absolutely nuts and such a delight and so exciting to see people's response.
It's also not overwhelming, and it's like you look for a recipe online, and you have to read through pages and pages of a story before you get to the actual recipe. You're So when you talk about people are sharing their stories in this book, I wanna be very clear that it's not pages and pages of a story, that then it's finally you get to their recommendations. No, it's, like, nice and succinct, but also very meaningful. So, I will share that as I was reading the book, or I didn't my ADHD didn't let me sit down and read the whole book because of all the pictures, because of all the places, because of all the titles, but as I was
Yep.
flipping through, I was getting emotional because I didn't know that I needed this. And you said, I don't know that I answered your question. That for me, that I didn't even know that this was a book that I needed. Was there a moment, were you traveling somewhere? Were you trying to put together an itinerary for yourself where you were like, I need a resource, but that doesn't exist? Did you have that light bulb moment?
So essentially, I think it started with my own experience moving to Amsterdam because so many people would
Oh,
come visit me. And the way that I would give them my recommendations, again, my ADHD, I cannot give someone just like a bullet pointed list. I have to say so many things all the fucking time. Like I just cannot shut up for 1 second. So I would lead in with a little bit of context and then be like, okay, but let me bold the points of interest so that if they want to skim this, they can find that really easily. And like maybe I should include a map of the information in case they want to view it that way. Maybe I should include some links of things. Maybe I should include pictures so they don't get bored. This is me just creating like a guest room book for my own apartment in Amsterdam, being
yeah,
like, you came to
yeah,
visit us. Now what? Here's where to go for breakfast. Here's where to go for whatever. This book is how my brain works. And to be fair, not neurotypical. So I'm glad it's resonating with people, but I think it's just truly a shift of how you approach travel recommendations. It doesn't have to
yeah.
be a bulleted list. It doesn't have to be like super in depth. It can be information and storytelling. It's like I could never learn history in school, but the moment that I read like a literary version of historical fiction, it was like, oh, I get it. This is what happened with the Boleyn sisters. Got it.
No,
That kind
exactly.
of thing.
I wanna pull up my own email. I have an Amsterdam email that I put together after I was in Amsterdam because a friend was going right after me, and similarly, I have links and I have, like, descriptions of why, and I even have I talk about how Amsterdam is known for their Indonesian food, and I link to a restaurant that has since closed, but I
Yeah.
was like, "But it's important for you to know that this exists because go find something that's similar to this because it was
Yes.
such a good meal."
The Indonesian food and the Surinamese food, like that's such a good recommendation. It's really sorry, go look up who was colonized by the country that you're visiting, and their
Yes.
food is going to be really good in the place that you're visiting, which is so fucked. But also go patronize those businesses, support
Yeah.
them. Yeah, it makes total sense.
But it's just so fun hearing how you are describing the origins of this because that deeply speaks to me.
Yeah,
Let's back up a tiny bit. You talked about your experience working with Lonely Planet and how they've never done anything like this before. I think so many people, I assume, anyone who has traveled places thinks, I want to write a travel book. I want to be a travel guide. Or they go eat at a nice restaurant. I want to be a food critic. There are these sort of fabulous, I don't want to say over the top career aspirations, but
yeah.
it's such a niche opportunity that people are like, I want to do this thing. It sounds so novel and exciting. What was that process like for you? What was it like working with Lonely Planet? What was it like writing a freaking travel guide?
Absolutely wild. So, first, I got so incredibly lucky with every step of this. Like, I don't want to be the person who's, oh, I just got lucky. I, of course, also think that I'm very talented and did a good job at this. But more so than that, like, I got very lucky that I was pitching this at a time when Lonely Planet was already thinking about wanting more LGBTQ content and reaching
Oh,
out to them, having them be like, oh my God, we're so interested in this. Let us set up an interview. Like, I spent a lot of time with my agent building out the proposal and really fine tuning it, making sure that it had like the appropriate demographic information, the appropriate comparative titles, like why should this book be written by specifically you, specifically now, specifically for us. So we didn't just pitch to Lonely Planet, we pitched to a bunch of different publishers, and ultimately the vision that Lonely Planet had for the book and the offer that they were able to present was just so incredibly compelling. I couldn't have dreamed that would even be a possibility. Like, I'm writing this proposal thinking, I hope someone picks it up. If not, I guess I can self-publish. And then it's like Lonely fucking Planet. So it's
Right.
crazy. Absolutely crazy. But then in addition to getting the offer and starting the work, to work with such an amazing editor, Becca at Lonely Planet is so phenomenal, so thoughtful. She just makes everything shine. The designer, Emily, is the reason that the book is so freaking beautiful. Every person I interviewed is why the book is interesting. So I'm certainly not doing that self-deprecating thing of it was everyone else. It wasn't me. It was definitely also me. And logistics of this was a nightmare to pay everyone, get contracts signed and whatever. But
Sure. But it does take a team to put a book together like this.
yes, it's not just me by any means. And then there's like the sales and marketing team and the PR team. Like, it takes a village to put a book into the world. It has been a dream. And since I was a child, wanted to be an author. Once I was an older child, I wanted to be Anthony Bourdain. This was kind of me going down that route. And it's just been surreal. It's been so cool.
Yeah. What was you said you had to answer the questions, why me, why now, why this, why the ones that you rattled off that I didn't remember.
You're fine.
You shared little nuggets of that earlier on in this conversation. Can you unpack that a tiny bit more?
Let me back up now. My day job that is not travel writing, which has long been my side hustle, is in SEO. So I have worked in search engine optimization, which makes sense as a travel writer because I can get eyeballs on my work also. It's really rad. But
We should talk.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, like, I'm available for work, anybody. But truly, it was very obvious to me in doing the research for this book proposal, there just are not as many resources as you would think for queer travel online. And the search interest in it versus the results that there are for those queries just don't match. And essentially, the way that I phrased it in the proposal is, this is like a hole in the internet that's really a hole in our cultural fabric. Like, why are we not prioritizing content for this community? Why are we not making it as accessible as possible? Why are we not talking about anything other than the fact of these places are dangerous for queer travel, or these places have a pride parade sponsored by Heineken? Like, it's always like corporate sponsored and rainbow washed, or it's really fear mongering. So why don't we have something in between? And that was the big thing for me, was this is a community that deserves to feel just as welcome around the world as any other community, and we should be enabling that to happen.
You said Lonely Planet didn't really have a lot in this space. Do they have a standard practice? They've created many travel guides. Can you share a little, is there inside scoop of how the Lonely Planet specific process works? And then how did the sort of how did the gay marriage work?
Yeah. So I will say, in a traditional guidebook that's like destination driven, there's almost always a section somewhere in the book that addresses LGBTQ culture and has recommendations in that space. So that exists, but it wasn't a thing that existed the other way around. It was like you had to have the destination first, and then there might be a section about it. Also had content on web that was based on LGBTQ travel, but they didn't really have it everywhere. So it was piecemeal. So it seems, and I'm going to assume, I should really check with my PR people before I give these answers. I'm going to assume that the pandemic also probably impacted the speed at which Lonely Planet was able to pick this up as a priority.
Sure.
So I think, if I had to guess, they were probably ready for this to be a thing in 2020, and then everything shut down and panic. So then for me to approach them in 2023, 2024 and be like, I'm ready to write this book, and here's how I envision it, and here's why it's completely different from everything else on the market, it was a really good time for them to pick it up. And they were really intentional, and they cared a lot. Like, this team really deeply cared about this being a resource for this community. And I'm so grateful for that, because they could have just been like, hell yeah, we know those queer people have deep pockets, let's go. Like, they could have just been like totally money grubby, but they weren't. They wanted this to be really thoughtfully put together. And I think that shows.
Did they have, I don't want to use the word influence because that sounds aggressive, but were there cities or countries that were important to them to include because of whatever reason?
Super good question. No. And so the interesting
Mm,
thing is, and I think this was probably the scariest part for Lonely Planet was in my proposal, I did not give destinations. I was like, here's what they could be,
uh,
maybe, but this was people first. I found the people, then that informed the destinations that were featured. So I had this whole group of people that I'm like, I have either followed this person's work for a long time, or I've heard a lot about them, or I've seen them in different places. And I think that I can trust them to have good travel recommendations as a queer person. And I think that they have the authority to speak on this topic.
mm,
And then I basically reached out, was like, hi, I'm doing this project and I would love to feature you for this destination. Would you want to work together? I can pay you a little bit. And then basically, I either got a yes or a no from everyone. And that's how the table of contents got built out. So
oh,
it
wow.
was very much, I want it to be the right people first, more so than the destinations. Thankfully, it worked out beautifully. There are some really interesting destinations in that list. And it's not just New York and London, although they both are in there. It's also
Sure.
like Richmond, Virginia, and Edinburgh, Scotland, and all these different places that I don't think are the first to come to mind for people when they think of queer travel, which was really
Moab,
cool.
Utah is where I just opened the book to.
Yeah, there you go.
Things I wouldn't have thought. I wouldn't have thought.
Saugatuck Douglas in Michigan. It's if Gilmore Girls was on the lake. It's so weird, but it's like a gay mecca.
Fascinating. I know there
Yeah,
were so many where that's where the ADHD kicked in. I was like, what's this place?
right?
I want
All the
to.
pictures. I'm like, I want to go there. Yeah, of course.
I know. Was there any like this led to that, this person led to that person
Yes.
situation?
Oh, 100%. So
Yeah.
honestly, once I got a yes from, I would say, two different groups within the queer community. Once I got a yes from the Queer Nomads, lesbian couple in London, all the other lesbian couples or queer women that I reached out to were like, oh, yeah, if they're on board, we're on board. On the
Yeah.
other side, it was like once I had two bad tourists in Madrid and I had a couple of men in Amsterdam, everyone was like, oh, yeah, we all know them. If they're involved, this is probably fine. So it was really like building up those initial contacts. But then
Yeah.
some were like completely unrelated and unaware of everything. Like it's not a book full of influencers. There's like
Right.
a queer bookshop owner, there's a queer activist from Malta who's like works in politics. There's just people all over the map. And I
And they
wanted
were
it
just
to,
people that you knew from Instagram or stumbled upon on Instagram or social
yes,
media or the internet or
and
that's
that
great.
word of mouth situation, right? So many queer
Mhm.
people, and this is in the foreword from the book, which
Yeah.
Paula Akman wrote, and she and I worked for the same publication like many moons ago. But she says word of mouth really is how this was spread for such a long time. It was the only way that we could find information that was trustworthy. And so the recommendations that I got from the initial people I spoke to informed the little domino effect. So it was really interesting. My favorite was that when I was thinking about Thailand, especially as they were legalizing same sex marriage, I was like, it would be so cool if I could have the RuPaul of Thailand vagina heels, but that would never happen. I reached out to the Thai tourism board to be like, who would you like to see featured? I'm not as familiar with this market. And they fucking connected me with Pangina Heels. And I was like, this is insane that this was your recommendation. I love this. Thank you. Can I be a guest judge on Drag Race? Please.
Seriously.
My
Or just,
God.
a hug when you go
Yeah,
visit.
honestly, can I
Right.
be in RuPaul's presence? That'd be cool. But Pangina now will send me like little voice memos and be like, just wanted to say thank you again for including me in the book. Like, really so thrilled to be a part of this project. I'm like, girl, you could have been so snobby and standoffish with me and I would have had no problem with it. But like, why are you also the sweetest, most humble baby? I love this.
That's so fun.
It's a
Are there any places that you needed to cut from the book?
To cut from the book, no, thankfully. There were places I was never going to include in the first place. I would never put like Saudi
Mm,
Arabia or like Yemen because it's like we would literally get murdered if we went there.
right. Yeah.
No, I will say I had the happiest time including, I wanted to include as many different locations as possible, of course, and be like widespread throughout the world. But there is still a lot of contention around queer rights in a lot of countries in Africa and in a lot of countries in Asia. So it was a little bit harder to, how can I put it? I want to include those spaces, but not at the peril of the reader. So that was
Right.
ultimately what I was thinking was like, even if there is like a really tight knit subculture of a queer community here, if overall the sentiment in that country is negative toward the LGBTQ community, then I don't feel safe sending you there because I want you to be safe. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit challenging. So I was so grateful to be able to include Cape Town and Johannesburg in South Africa. I was so grateful to
Mhm.
be able to include Bangkok in Thailand. There's a bunch of other destinations that are included in kind of the hit list of like adrenaline pumping adventures and like those family friendly festivities. All of those, we got to be a little bit more inclusive in that section. But for the main profiles, we were a little bit more limited, I would say, to people
Yeah.
who felt really comfortable recommending their destination. And even in Cape Town, Yoliswa says, I don't know that Cape Town is the most queer friendly, but it is beautiful and worth visiting. And I think you should go to Johannesburg while you're there because that's where you're going to find queer community. So it's like the
Mhm.
combination of them and being so transparent and for real with the reader. It's like an influencer. If they're like, oh my God, go to this restaurant, it's amazing. And you go there and it sucks because they just got paid to say that. No, you don't want that. So I
Right.
wanted this to
Right, you're
be
gonna
antithesis.
unfollow them.
Yeah.
Were there places where you talk about Yemen, like, I think I don't wanna say that's quote unquote obvious, but I think there are places that are top of mind, places that we might not want to ever visit. Were there places that you didn't think that and it surprised you?
This is maybe a little bit dark, but the US at this point, I feel a little
Oh,
bit weird
meh.
about. I
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
But
yeah.
at this point, the only ones that I'm like, shit, now I'm a little bit nervous. I am telling people to go to the former capital of the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia, or to go to tiny blue
Mhm.
dot in the big red sea of Austin, Texas. It makes me feel a little bit nervous. Those places individually are very safe. Surrounding areas, I'm not so sure. So that's
Yeah,
been a little bit tough. And it's also changed since when I wrote the book. Like when I wrote the book, we were not in this weird dystopian hellscape that we're in right now with all the bullshit happening in Washington. But like we are now. And so what does that mean for this book? I'm not totally sure.
yeah. In in any sort of direction, was there something that surprised you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. All over the place. I would say the biggest one for me was I lived in Spain for a year. I was in the South in Sevilla and absolutely loved it, but it was like Catholic as hell. So I
Mm,
remember being there for Semana Santa, the Holy Week leading up to Easter. Oh my God. Like all of the processionals of people that are not in the KKK, but really look like they're in the KKK with the tall, pointy white hats. Super freaky. And I was like, this place is so religious. I'm not religious at all, but like, this is wild to observe. So in my head, I assumed, okay, cool. So queer thing, probably not something I should bring up while I'm here. Like, the culture was very machismo at that point. This is 10 years ago, to
mhm.
be fair, but I was just under the assumption this country as a whole is very religious and this probably won't be chill here. Come to find, Madrid is like absolutely a queer travel destination that people love, and specifically the neighborhood of Chueca in Madrid is like known for being super gay friendly. So it was just me learning not every single city in one country. It's not a monolith, the culture overall.
Yeah.
And of course, there are certain places that are really religious and still tolerant of the queer community, and that's great. But yeah, learning that Madrid was not something that I needed to be afraid of as a queer person was great.
No, that's a very and thoughtful takeaway.
Yeah.
Um, I don't this is picking a favorite child. Is upon finishing the book, is there a place where you're like, "Oh, wow, I have to go there next?"
Yes, I really wanna go everywhere, obviously, but
Well, yes, of course. We all wanna go everywhere, but if you had to pick, let's say top
exactly.
3 in no particular order. That way you can be
Ooh,
fair.
okay. So, for my interests specifically, I am like an
Uh-huh.
indoor cat. I am like not usually a very extroverted type person
Okay.
and much better one on one. And I'm generally just a quiet queer. I'm not looking for nightclubs. I basically wrote this book for myself, essentially being like, I cannot go to the parades and the clubs. What can I do? So essentially, learning that Edinburgh is like this literary queer city with all of this history was super cool. So
Mhm.
that was definitely one that struck me as, oh, I bet you I could spend a lot of time there exploring everything. And thankfully, I'm having my UK book launch event there. So that's happening very soon. So I'll check
So
that one right off the
cool.
list. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Super stoked about that. I think too, I haven't done any travel in Oceania. I haven't been to New Zealand or Australia. So I would love to go to Melbourne and hang out with Aurelia and just
Mhm.
see everything that she recommended there. It seems just like such a an idyllic, rad place. There's so much to explore in nature. There's a lot to be done in like all of the different comedy events and like plays and things like that too. So really interesting destination there. I think the last one then for me, I've done a lot of travel in Latin America, South America. Sao Paulo looks like so much fun. I think I've avoided it because I speak Spanish and I don't speak Portuguese and I feel ashamed about it, but I think that we can probably get past it. I think it'll be really fun.
My friend Tiago is from Brazil, and he is an avid gaze reading listener, and I think will be thrilled to hear Brazil high up on this list. And he, I know, would be a champion of visiting as well.
Ah, amazing. Honestly, tell him to read that chapter because Clovis, the local person, sweetest angel baby, love him so much. Just absolutely excellent human being with great recommendations.
As a good friend, I have to ask if he's single and looking and willing to move to.
Single, no, but I'm not certain that he's in like a closed relationship. Maybe look him up.
Listen,
Who among us,
AJ.
right?
So
Yeah.
funny. You talk about being an indoor cat, an indoor queer. Were there I'm also not a huge nightclub person, and I think it's hard to even think about what to do.
Yeah.
So I know that was like obviously part of why you created the book, but were there things that you were specifically seeking out where you're like, oh, what's a great queer coffee shop? Or oh, like my brain, I like literally can't think of another place. So how did you
Yeah.
get to those sort of alternative places?
So a lot of this came down to the interviewing. And I think that's what
Oh,
I
sure.
like about this book too, was like, I am just naturally very curious. And for me,
Mhm.
like when I went to journalism school, my strongest skill set aside from writing and editing was the interview process. Like I take it very seriously to make someone feel comfortable opening up, asking questions that kind of get to the root of things. So for me, I would start with, okay, how did you end up where you are right now? And so that would be like laying the base for the story. How did you decide that this would be the place that you would settle down? So we would start there. Then essentially, okay, if you had one day to tell someone or show someone as a tour guide all of your favorite things, what would that look like? Then from
Mhm.
there, okay, what if they came and they had kids? What's like a family friendly option? What if they're
Mhm.
coming to celebrate like an anniversary? What's something romantic? What if they're like very active and outdoorsy? What if they just want to party? Like I would just bring up what if until we got to the end of it. And so eventually I would probably be like, I'm an indoor cat. I like to read and be boring and go to museums and shit. What would you recommend for that? And then
Uh-huh.
that's how we would get there. And then I would essentially say, I always liked to end with, is there anything that will immediately tell you that someone in your city is a tourist? And if so, what? Also, are there any absolutely do not do this type things in your destination that people need to know? Like in
Mhm.
Amsterdam, do not get your phone out while you're in the red light district because a sex worker will throw it into a canal. Like, don't do
Yeah.
it. It's illegal. They won't get in trouble. You'll just look like an idiot. That kind of
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, I that was getting to the root of everything was what if different type of travelers have you had like your parents visit, what did you do with them, have you had your
Mhm.
partners visit, friends visit, whatever. And it was really cool to hear everyone's different ideas for those. And I sent them a general outline of the questions that I had in advance so that they had time to think about it and didn't have to rack their brain in the moment.
Yeah. My question of, are there specific destinations that you would go to go even deeper? Are there
Oh
indoor
God.
cat places that are not the typical museums, plays, etc., that were surprising to you that are worth shouting out about?
Totally. So I think a lot of the ones that I identified to your point were like places to get coffee. So
Mhm.
places to get coffee or to get like a light bite, places to walk outside essentially. So like parks and along like bodies of water. And then
But
another big
other
one was
other than any of those things, were you like, "Oh my god, I would have never thought about the giant Ferris wheel in such and such," right? Just was there like a specific thing where you're like, "What? That exists?" Because I think, parks and coffee shops, we
interesting.
know that those are things, right?
Yeah.
But where you're like, "Oh my god, I didn't even know. I didn't know that Mesrab existed," you
Yes, I was
know?
just gonna say, I would ask, are there performance spaces that are not specifically for music? So like spoken word
Mm,
or anything like that? Those would be questions because people, even if they don't go to them, they usually know what they are and that they
sure.
exist. That I would usually ask about comedy because that's one thing I do really enjoy as a comedy show.
Mhm.
I often asked about drag, which it's a like a middle ground between going clubbing and being an indoor cat. Like
Sure.
you're sitting and watching, you don't have to participate if you don't want to, for the most part. And then for me, I would almost always ask about like bookshops and board game related places. So there's a board game bar in Amsterdam that we love that I would be like, if that existed other places, I would love that. So a lot of those types of things. Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me was learning that in Australia, they have like big things as like an attraction on driving around. So like the giant tennis ball or like a giant like fish, and they're attractions to get you to road trip around the country instead of flying. That was one that I'm like, that's rad, but super weird.
We oddly have that in the United States too.
What? What do you
Yeah.
mean?
So I used to work for this company that toured shows for kids around the country, and it was these professional actors, and they would like literally drive in a van around the country, and they would stop at like the world's largest ball of twine,
Oh
the
my
world's
God.
largest mailbox. Yeah, like those are legit.
Incredible. I love that. It feels like something from the bygone era where like we all really cared about Guinness World Records. That feels like it's left over from
Yeah,
then. Yeah.
yeah. What happened to those?
I don't know. No one cares anymore. I don't know. Like it's still on my bucket list to get one, but I have no idea what the hell it would be at this point. They must
Yeah,
all be achieved.
I doubt it.
What, I'm going to grow my fingernails longer than that one guy? That's
No, you could do
absolutely
something
not.
totally unrelated.
You just make
And
something up?
yeah.
You don't think we've reached the limits of human creativity? I worry about that sometimes.
I don't know. There's
Sorry, that got dark really fast.
no, the person who wore clown makeup the longest, like that.
True. It
And I
might,
just
though. That's my problem. This is
I
my
know,
issue.
but did they reach out to Guinness? Probably not.
Okay, fair. That's a fair point. I just worry we're all just monkeys at typewriters and Shakespeare is coming out somewhere. Like somebody might have
Yeah.
thought of that because you thought of that. It's like that awful rule with porn, rule of 34. If you can think of it to say out loud, it exists.
Tell me more. What is that?
I don't know where it.
This
Why
vaguely
am I
sounds
here?
familiar.
Yeah, I literally
Here,
don't.
you talk about the 34 rules of porn, and I'll hold up your book so that it feels relevant.
Perfect. Thank you. So, as you know, of course, I don't even know where this originated, but it's called the Rule of 34. If you look it up, it
Okay.
basically says it's like one of those principles, like anything that can go wrong will go wrong, Murphy's Law. So, Rule of 34 is if you have the thought, do you think porn exists for insert topic? If you have the thought, it exists.
It does.
And working in SEO can confirm. Gross. Everyone is so gross on the internet. It's awful.
Let's not shame people. They're not gross. They're curious.
Oh, no. Sometimes it's like murder porn. I get really sad.
Yeah. If it's illegal or murdery.
I'm not going to kink shame. I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum, but maybe not murder.
Yeah. Let's not murder.
Yeah. I'm glad we agree.
SEO. What is like the craziest thing that you've discovered?
Oh, God. It's all either sad or gross. It's
Nothing
really
exciting?
Oh, no. Plenty of exciting things.
Okay.
I would say just that most searches are NSFW.
Yeah.
B, sometimes it's really dark. Like, you have to consider most people aren't thinking about the fact that down the line, someone can see their search queries not associated with them, but there is a database of this query has been searched this many times overall, and on average per month, it's searched this many times. And it's sometimes really sad, like, how to kill yourself was one of the hardest days I had. I was like looking up something completely unrelated and I was like, oh no, this makes me so sad that this exists. But like other times I'm looking up like something about family relationships and it's like stepmom porn. And you're like, no, stop. I didn't say that. Why are we talking about that now? Or like stepsister and stepmom together, question mark? Like what? No, stop.
Again, not yucking anyone's yum, but
Nope. We've all seen Clueless.
Oh my God, yeah. I saw something on Instagram the other day, and it was a screenshot of one of those like Google drop-down things where it starts and then you see what the next 10 are or whatever. And it was how to convert to, and it was like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, a PDF, and then more religions.
Yes, truly. And it's like all these questions that you've never ever thought of. Like when I used to work at theSkimm and I was doing their SEO and we were trying to inform like our wellness section, it was stuff like, what does my like period blood being this color mean? Like stuff that you would not think about. But yeah, of
Yeah.
course people are searching that because what are they going to go talk to their doctors without Googling it first? Like, of course not.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating. And I think that's part of why I like doing it for a day job. But yeah, the inside of people's minds exists in SEO data.
We're not here for a brainstorming session. However, the book of the like weirdest searches and
Oh, yeah.
answers, I would totally read.
That's a really good idea. I should bring that up. Ooh, thank you. Thank you for this gift that you've given me.
You're
Honestly,
very welcome.
was part of why I wanted to call this book the LGBTQ Travel Guide, if we're being real, is like
Mhm.
SEO values.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just gonna say, to loop it back to the book, if yes, LGBTQ travel guide is a perfect thing to search, but I don't know. I was gonna try to come up with a clever like search metaphor. It's
Yeah,
gone. It's not
I wanted
here.
to call it Eat Gay Love. It was already taken. Like every fun thing I thought of, somebody was like, no. And I was like, fine, we'll do SEO. No, I love it. It worked out perfectly. But yeah, the world of gay books, most of the fun puns have been taken. So I'm gonna have to
Ar-
keep thinking,
Around the world with 80 gays, though. It's
right?
pretty good. Pretty
Even
good.
30 something for this book was so much to coordinate for my ADHD ass. I don't think I could have done 80. It would have been insane.
I know. I cannot wait to like continue to sit down and flip through it. Like I said, it is digestible, it is beautiful, it is succinct, and we all need it.
I think so
That's all.
too. I'm so glad you
Yeah.
love it. Fun little fact, if you look at it from the side, each of the main profiles is a different color, so it looks like a little rainbow.
Yes, it does. Oh my god, how
Yeah.
cute.
Also, all the
Um,
people on the cover are people interviewed in the book. Fun fact for that as well.
I was also just gonna say, at the very least, even if you let's say you hate traveling, which that's a different conversation, this book is such a great time capsule of queer community and queer life at this time in the world, and I think that in and of itself makes for a very special experience. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate you getting what is special about this book and also just sharing your emotional response to it. It's the most rewarding thing for me. Like, I should probably care about sales. That's probably true. But really, I care about people telling me how they feel about this book and like the response being so emotionally driven and so community focused has just been so uplifting, especially in a time where everything feels like it's on fire. Just
Yeah.
what a joy to watch this unfold. So I hope everyone will read it and love it.
Yes, thank you for sharing how a travel book comes to be. I think it's so fascinating because I certainly had no idea. But also, I hope that people, A, travel to these places, and B, remember to treat people with kindness and empathy and all the things that we need in this moment. And I think the book also really highlights and shares some of that too. So
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. I really appreciate this. And also, I'm so excited to see how this episode turns out because we went down a lot of twists and turns.
Me too. All right, Alicia Valenski, thank you so much for being here. The LGBTQ plus travel guide from Lonely Planet, available now wherever you get your books. I can't wait for you to check it out.